I were a rich man. And yet we are, aren't we? All of us are rich, rich in life, in breath, in life itself. Ah, our affirmation, I trust and live in the infinite flow of abundant good. So, yes, I gave you a little warning. Today we're talking about money. And what better day than the day before Halloween to talk about something as scary as finance? But here's the deal, when we live in fear about money, we constrict the flow. Just like Brett read, there is a flow. And when we constrict it, things clot. This is not healthy. When we live in a healthy love of money, the flow is easy and natural. Now, that's not to say we're going to put money above everything else. No, but we're going to relate to money as something that is normal and natural, something that is part of this universe that we live in. So I don't know about you, but when I was growing up, we didn't talk about money, politics, or religion in polite conversations. So how can we be here in a religious, well, spiritual organization talking about money? That's especially scary, right? See, there's a taboo about talking about money, sex, politics from the pulpit. Heavens, you don't want to do that. But because there's such a tremendous source of emotional charge in most people's lives, it's important that we do talk. Because if we are, and we are, a teaching that applies spiritual principles to human needs as aspirations, as Ernest Holmes said, then it's important that we don't hide out. See, if I'm not willing to talk about my own relationship to money out of fear that y'all will just turn Zoom off or just turn your cameras off, maybe, and walk away unbeknownst to anybody else, uh, which happens, by the way, then I'm not doing anybody any favors. I'm not doing myself any favor, and I'm not doing y'all any favor because this is a topic that we need to address. And we are so fortunate at the Austin Center for Spiritual Living that we are loved and supported by so many people, and that we have money in the bank. We owe no bills, we have no debt. And so life is good for us. And it's that way because we are a tithing organization. And because several years ago we decided to do that. The people who were on the board at that time said we're going to be a tithing organization. We continue to tithe, and we do so religiously. So I'm talking about money today because it is something that as we bring it up to the forefront, we look at it and we say, oh, let us apply this year-long theme of everyday wonder to this topic, which often has an emotional charge for us. Like I said, especially in church. I don't know if y'all were raised where they pass the basket twice, but it's really something that's kind of, it's almost a joke in our society that people will go out of their way. I remember one joke that I heard about it was these two guys are, well, they're on a desert isle. And of course, they're abandoned there. And the one guy is like, oh, well, how are we going to get along? What are we going to do? And the other guy said, Not to worry." He said, not to worry. I pledged to my church. I'm a tither. They are going to find me. So it just depends on how you look at it. Ernest Holmes tells us that, he says this, I always have an abundance of money and abundance of whatever it takes to make life happy and opulent. There is a continuous movement toward me of supply money of all that I need to express the fullest life, happiness, and action. Now, I hadn't read that, and I didn't even know what an affirmation was when I made a promise to myself. I had just graduated from college, and I was staying with my aunt in her, I think it was probably 30-foot fifth wheel RV while I looked for a job. I had no car. So I took the bus wherever I needed to go. And at that time, the bus was 35 cents a ride. And the day came that I was down to my last 35 cents. And that meant that I could take the bus somewhere but I didn't have enough money to get home. And I still can picture myself. I think I'm standing at an intersection, which appears to be uh, really what was happening at that time in my life, both physically and um, spiritually and emotionally. I said, I am never going to be broke again. That was what I decided. Now, I didn't have those words. I didn't have the words. I didn't say to myself, I always have an abundance of money and an abundance of whatever it takes to make life happy and opulent. There is continuous movement toward me of supply, of money, of all that I need to express the fullest life, happiness, and action. I hadn't read The Science of Mind. I hadn't even heard of Ernest Holmes at that time. But I decided there and then that I would never be broke again. Now, although I didn't have the words, I did have the thought, and I definitely had the feeling. Now, did money fall out of the sky? No. Did I find anything on the ground? No. But I found a job. I was able to move out of the 30-foot trailer and into a bigger space. It would have been kind of hard to find anything smaller. And did I mention that at my job, my office mate at this new job introduced me to treatment? She introduced me to New Thought. And she eventually introduced me to my husband. See, I didn't know all these things were going to happen. I didn't know what was going to come out of that decision that I made. But once I made the decision, the universe conspired in my favor. Of course, I had to do some of the work myself. I had to put out resumes. I had to do several things along the way. Um, and one of the things I mentioned a couple weeks ago is I did that 40-day prosperity plan. And I'll talk more about that in a bit. But it wasn't that I didn't do anything, that I just made this declaration, but I also then followed my intuition about that, so that I went ahead and did the work. Treat and move your feet. So I didn't have much of a relationship with money. I was the sixth of 8 children, so it wasn't like there was a lot of spare cash laying around. We ate well, and we had a roof over our head and things like that. But you've got 8 kids. there's some places where you cut corners. But so many people have been taught that money is bad, evil, definitely not spiritual, and that kind of thing. And so we carry this judgment, the shame, the guilt around money, and we're taught not to talk about it. Sometimes we pretend we don't even want it, even though we do. And if we have a lot, some people flaunt it or hide that they have it. And if we have a little, you can also flaunt that, talk about the poverty, making us good people, or hide that as well. But I had to learn that money is a divine idea of circulation in this human world, and that it is just as sacred as everything else. It's a currency, it's a medium of exchange. It's simply a tool to circulate this energy that we have. And once we free ourselves from those old beliefs and emotional conflicts, we experience a healthy relationship with money. It flows in. We keep some, we release some, knowing that it's always in circulation, and that the infinite can't withhold it because it can't be different than its true nature. Its true nature is opulent, extravagant, lavish abundance. That's what it is. And so money is an effect. Money responds to consciousness, just like our bodies respond to consciousness. The world of our affairs responds to our consciousness. Money is a symbol which we energize with our beliefs, our feelings. And so money itself is neither good nor bad, but a tool for that self expression. So it's not so scary if we think about it as that. and realize that we are constantly immersed in the wealth of the universe and we're never cut off. And the more trusting we are, the more peaceful and the gentler we are around the flow and circulation of money in our lives, we become more peaceful. And as we look into this and look into how money works in our lives and in the world, it's our friend. And we can get to know our friend better. There's an exercise I did a long time ago, and I'll just share a little bit about it with you to kind of get more comfortable with money. So you sit with money with a bill of some sort. If you have it, and now that we don't carry cash so much anymore, maybe you just think about the zeros in your checking account and just imagine as you contemplate this, what's the chatter going on in your mind? I know there's some there. Um, and just use the opportunity to discover what you're really feeling about money. Do you want to get rid of it as soon as possible? Do you want to add more zeros to it? Do you think that somehow you don't deserve it or somehow you deserve more? And just make yourself a note. What are these beliefs I have about money? And do these beliefs still serve me? And if so, yes, keep them. And if not, how about releasing that? How about releasing the ideas that don't serve us? And then write down what we want. And starting maybe with our affirmation for this morning. Maybe we start with, I trust and live in the infinite flow of abundant good. Maybe we just start there. And what will happen then is things will change in your life. So, one of the things we have to let go of is this idea that there's a pie of money, that money is a pie, and we need to get our piece of the pie. And if we have a big piece of the pie, that won't leave enough pie for anybody else. But then we have to think about money as, well, like health. Just because I am healthy doesn't take away from anybody else's health. Just because I'm in love doesn't take away from anybody else's love. So if we're joyously in love, if we're joyously healthy, then that's the same way it is with wealth. When it comes to wealth, sometimes we forget that truth and hold ourselves back and deprive ourselves in the name of making sure that there's plenty for everyone. I know one of the myths that I had in my life was, what if I make more money than my father? Well, first of all, as a female, wow, what would that be like? What if I made more money than my husband? What if? And so I had to let go of the idea that I surpassed my father's income. I remember when I first moved to Austin, I was talking to a gentleman here at the center, and I said, "Well, I'm going to look for a job." And he said, "Well, how much do you want to make?" And so I told him, I gave him a figure, and he said, "Oh, well, if you want to make that much money, you're going to have to be self-employed." It's like, oh. And then, fortunately, I was aware enough to realize that that was his limitation. That wasn't my limitation. And so, long story short, I found a job. I made the money that I wanted and more. But I had to let go of the limitation and realize that it was my worth. So, as we recognize that money is neither good nor bad, not something evil or something to be worshiped, we align with the nature of the universe, which is always flowing, always plenty, and we bring this curiosity to it. What is it saying to me? What is it about? And then it's no longer a taboo topic. Now, we don't need to flaunt it or hide it. We just are with it. See, some of our trauma around money is based in myths and old thinking, false beliefs. So we bring that curiosity to it. Louise Hay tells us this. She said, "You can't clean your house if you don't see the dirt." Well, we don't wallow in the dirt. We just see it and release it with statements of truth. So we clean house. So let's look at some of the myths that we might have around money. First of all, okay, myth one: the great spiritual teachers were poor. So we think about, oh, Jesus, classic example, poor, but he wasn't poor. The birth story in Luke has him born in humble circumstances, but that was because there was no room at the inn, not because his parents were poor, because you don't even go to the inn unless you can afford it. And then Matthew's birth story has him in the house of Bethlehem where Mary lived, and then the wise men brought him gifts. The first of which was gold, which funded his ministry. And think about it, Jesus had a bookkeeper, which you don't need unless you have money. He wore a seamless robe. This was one of the high points. And he was supported by the women who preached to him. Now there's nowhere that says that he can't afford something. He does say the statement about being hard for rich men to enter the kingdom of heaven, which was within, but that was a comment about the attachment to wealth and the social status of his time. Well, he was a rebel, so I don't think he was so concerned about his social status. And then we think about Buddha. Buddha was wealthy. He rejected both the extreme wealth and then he rejected extreme poverty for that middle way. Think about Muhammad. He was a wealthy trader. He married a rich widow. Lao Tzu, respected government official. No indication of poverty. We think about the forefathers, Abraham, Jacob, Joseph, Moses, all very well off. They had cattle, they had land. So it's time to just let go of that belief that spiritual leaders are poor. We have another myth: debt and loss. So with infinite oneness, there can be no debt or loss. Debt occurs when we agree to pay for something over time, or in a consciousness of fear and belief that the universe won't supply our needs. But ultimately, there's only one. The infinite can't owe itself something. There's only infinite abundance. In oneness, there's not this separation. There's not them and us. There's only one. And so the kind of debt that might create a problem comes from a consciousness of lack and not believing that there is a universal flow. And loss comes when we believe that money is ours and that there's only a limited supply coming from certain channels. The money is that creative energy. And it's something that if we hold on to it, we let it own us. And so we know that it comes in, some stays, some goes out. We let go of that death grip on money, and sometimes we might have a loss. But nothing's ever lost in the universe. And we put a claim into the universe to provide us with that lost amount or more and stay open to the universe. So we will experience the ever presence of opulence in the universe. There was a practitioner friend of mine who, well, she got scammed and she lost about $800 in this scam. But she opened to the abundance of the universe. And that money returned to her from a different form in a different channel, but it returned to her and more because she was open to receiving. It was like, this is my money and it belongs to me and nothing can be taken from me. And so it came back to her in a different way than she would have thought. So if we open to that, open to the flow, that works for us. Oh, and then we have another myth: shame and fitting in. Well, if we were raised in a shame-based home, school, or trying to keep up with the Joneses, uh, we might carry some shame and guilt around highly charged things like money, sex, both forms of divine energy. And when instead we learn that we have too much or not enough, our parents didn't know how to deal with that, so they bought, they hid, they didn't talk about it, overspent, underspent, whatever else it happened to be. And we learned to keep quiet or fit in or act out. And some of us are afraid that if we had too much money that our friends wouldn't like us anymore, or if we didn't have enough, we wouldn't fit in. And so our life tends to match that. The universe, as we know, says yes. Yes, you have too much money. Yes, you don't fit in. And so if we change that and we say, it's an abundant universe, I'm always supplied. The universe supports our expanding consciousness by matching our energy with surrounding people and circumstances. So money is a form of that divine energy. And we live in a quality, a constant flow of that divine quality. And as we bring our attention to it, our relationship with money will blossom like any relationship, anything that we focus on. So this week, let us become aware of our thoughts about money and how we handle it. And if you hear those old myths coming up, just replace them with friendly, supportive, expansive thoughts. I live in an abundant universe. I am worthy of abundance. I give and receive in perfect confidence. Because the source of all our good is infinite. The universe is never depleted, never runs dry. And so, but there's two forms of financial release. So we receive money, some of it we hold on to, we feather our nest. The rest we let go, we spend it on things that we want, we give it away, whatever it happens to be. So we either spend money, using money as that energy exchange for goods and services, like heat, water, even pay taxes for the roads, or we donate, tithe our money using that money to create a greater good. If we know that there is an organization that can do greater good with the money, we give to that. We may give to the food bank, we may give to any other organization that is on our list of charities. So we provide value. And the Austin Center for Spiritual Living is an abundant spiritual community. We are supported and sustained solely through donations. And I have been the treasurer of the board for about a year now. And there is a trend. We have a lot of people who give to our center in all sorts of ways. They give their time, talent, treasure, and we provide value. And some people give according to the perceived value they receive. And then we have some patrons who support us no matter what. They support us as you would support an artist, and we can count on that. And we have tithers. You can always tell a tither because they give exact amounts: $500.52. Tithing can be a loaded subject, and we don't usually talk about it here because it is a loaded subject, and we're all about love and kindness, and you know what? Tithing is kindness. It's simply the practice of giving and receiving. It's the giving and receiving principle of the universe. And you won't displease God if you don't tithe. The universe won't punish you if you don't tithe. It's just like if you do yoga, you're not going to be punished for not doing yoga. But you also won't receive the benefit if you don't actually do it. I've learned you actually have to exercise in order to, keep the flow going. So, and I learned you have to tithe in order to keep that flow going. And the conventional wisdom is you tithe to the source of your spiritual food. That's what I learned when I was coming up. And so if the Austin Center is the source of your spiritual food, then we welcome your tithe. But it's an opportunity to continue the flow of money in your life and to uplift the world. The other giving we have is the legacy giving. And as many of you know, we received a bequest earlier this year from someone who had mentioned us in their, well, we were the beneficiary on one of their policies. And that has supported us in a most magnificent way. And the interesting thing about that money that came to us was we didn't know it was out there. We didn't know that the person had named us as a beneficiary. And so it sat out there from 2014 until this year. And the interesting thing about that, it was in unclaimed property. And as I was recently cleaning out the ACSL mailbox, I saw that over the last 5 or 6 years, every year, we would get a note from the Secretary of State, whoever it is. I don't know who it is that has the unclaimed money. And they would say, oh, by the way, this is if you want to come to our seminar on how to get your unclaimed money, let us know. And it's like, well, I didn't pay attention to that because I thought, oh, well, that's great, but I don't have any unclaimed money. I looked under my name, there's no unclaimed money. I didn't look under the Austin Center for Spiritual Living, and I didn't look under New Vision Church of Religious Science, and that's where the money was. And it's so interesting to see what we could have been doing with that money in the meantime, but it came to us at the perfect time when we opened to it. So I invite you to open to that. Give yourself the gift of prosperity consciousness. And as a way of doing this, I invite you to join me in John Randolph Price's 40-day prosperity plan. So what I've done is on our website, austincsl.org, there is a link in the top menu to the 40-day prosperity plan. We're going to use John Randolph Price's book, The Abundance Book. And what I'm going to do is every day, starting tomorrow at noon, that'll be our introductory day, we're going to do the work that John Randolph Price asked us to do, which is simply an affirmation, meditation, journaling. We're going to do this together, 40 days. Well, actually 41, because we're going to do an introduction tomorrow. But if you will join with me in this, we are going to blow the roof off of prosperity consciousness. So do join for that. And yeah, do it soon. So that's all I wanted to tell you about this morning. But I do think it would be good for us to do this final meditation from John Randolph. So if you'll join me in meditation, this is the closing meditation in his book. And John Randolph Price, I do have to mention, he was the person, you might have heard his name, who did the World Peace Meditation that we use on December 31st. That's the guy we're talking about. So here, if you'll join me in his meditation, eyes open, eyes closed, whatever feels good to you. Just let's an exhale. I need an exhale. And breathing in again. And one more time, a deep exhale, sigh out. And breathing it in. What do I know of God? God is life. Life is omnipresent. All is alive. I see this in the wonders of nature, and I see this in myself. I'm alive because I am life. My life is God's life, and my life is God. I feel my livingness within me. I feel God. My awareness of God is growing. God is love. I feel love in my heart and know that this is the very Spirit of God flowing through my feeling nature. I could not love without God. I love, therefore I am one with God. My understanding of God is growing. God is wisdom and intelligence. God is mind, and I sense the infinite knowingness of that mind within me. I think, and I know that that which I think is and know is God's mind in expression. My knowledge of God is growing. Where is God? God is where I am, and God is what I am. I am an individualization of God, and the Spirit of God dwells within me as me. I am the light of the world. I turn within to the light and say, Thou art the light, the Spirit of the living God. You are my spirit, my soul, my body. And when I look, I see me. And I listen in the silence with acknowledgement from within. I am now conscious of God, of my inner self. I am the truth. I am the self. And through this consciousness of the reality of me, I open the door to spirit. I draw into my mind and feeling nature the wholeness of spirit, the allness of God. And my consciousness is filled with the light of truth. I know that there is nothing that I could truly desire that is not at this very moment standing at the door of my consciousness, ready to appear in my life and affairs. I have only to be conscious of this truth, and every need is met, every problem solved, every question answered. My consciousness of the divine within is all I will ever need for all eternity. And so let us contemplate these things in our hearts. Let it be so, and so it is.